Hey guys, welcome back to another reading vlog. My name is Paige. Welcome if you are new here. This is your first vlog. Hi, we like them on this channel. I'm in a reading slump. That is how we're starting off this week. It is not fun. I am not enjoying being in a reading slump. But I do find that the best cure for me for a reading slump, Kindle Unlimited. So will I be getting the amount of books off my physical TBR that I wanted to this month? Probably not. But it is Tuesday now. I spent all day yesterday trying to convince myself to start a novel love story by Ashley Poston, because that was one of the last physical books I had on my TBR for the month of August. And it just didn't happen. I basically am in this phase where I found absolutely anything else to do with myself last night other than read. So I'm just gonna read what I want to read, which is the new Ella Fields novel on Kindle. It's called Amid Clouds and Bones. I keep seeing her tease sections from this book. It is a fae marriage of convenience. It sounds right up my street. I absolutely adored Nectar of the Wicked by Ella Fields. It was so devourable. I read it so quickly, and that is exactly what I'm in the mood for. So that's what I'm going to be reading this evening. I do have to edit a video, so I won't be starting the reading like right this second, but we'll hopefully still get some reading done. Hopefully this really helps like pull me out of my slump, and maybe then I will be in the mood for a physical read, or maybe I will just have to keep reading on my Kindle. But either way, I would rather still be reading than forcing myself to read books on my physical TBR, even though I really don't want to and it's making me feel slumpy, because my physical TBR is not that bad. I did do some book shopping over the weekend though, but only 2 of the 3 books I bought are added to my physical TBR because I finally managed to find a physical copy of Play Along by Liz Tomford. So I've already read that, so that's not on my physical TBR. That was just like a little book trophy. Welcome to the vlog. It's gonna be a very chilled week of reading. I don't really have any plans. Everything is all very standard for me. So yeah, I am gonna edit and download this book, and then I'll catch up with you guys when we start reading. If anyone's wondering how things are going, I am 68% of the way through this book. I read so much of it. Absolutely yanked me out of my reading slump, which is exactly what I needed. And I can't get over how addicted Ella Fields books are. I'm just gonna have to try and like binge more of them, I think. Like, I don't know how many books Ella Fields has. I know that I still have Nectar of the Wicked sequel to read, and I'm genuinely at this point considering purchasing that on Kindle just to have more Ella Fields writing, because they're just so addictive and all-encompassing. I've read 68 pages in a matter of 24 hours. What I am really enjoying about this book is that I genuinely don't know who is Endgame. I feel like there was a period of time where, like growing up, I hated when books introduced multiple love interests because I always knew they were going to end up with the first guy. Like, that was just kind of the precedent that like books like Twilight set. Like, it was always the first love interest that was introduced was Endgame, and then you'd have like the second book where you would essentially just have to waste your time reading about them with this secondary character and then know that in the third book they would go back to the first guy again. And then ACOTAR and Sarah J Maas came along and kind of shifted that, and then I felt like there was a real shift to like how romantasies and love triangles kind of worked, and it became more, okay, the second guy is gonna be the guy. And now I just don't really know when I read books anymore like who is Endgame, and it's so fun. I feel like there's this real balance now of like, are authors gonna go classic or are they gonna go Sarah J Maas? I never know who to trust. I never know who is Endgame, and with this book particularly, it really has this feeling as if you are the main character, because you learn things at exactly the same rate that our main character does. And I haven't explained what this book is about at all, but that's because I'm just so obsessed with it, and like it's been so all-consuming that I haven't put the book down unless I have absolutely had to in the past 24 hours, and now I'm so far into it and so much has happened in the 68%, like let me tell you, that I don't even know where to begin explaining this story because I'm in the world. I can't step back to explain this. But we follow our main character Mildred, and she is a halfling princess. Like, she's half human, half fae. She is the result of an affair that her dad had, and she is being married off to a fae prince to cement an alliance between the Seelie and the humans whilst they are in a war against the Unseelie. And there is so much going on in this book, but it's really, really good. I love the kind of, it's a marriage of convenience, but it's also like forced marriage. It's also enemies to lovers, and the enemies to lovers is very seamless, and there's multiple enemies to lovers, like small plot lines that like feel very, very seamless and are done very well. And right now, at the point that I'm at, all I feel is confusion, but in the best way, because I have no idea who to root for. I'm genuinely scared to get too attached to any characters because I don't know who she's gonna end up with. And like, even now when one of them has done something horrendous, I still don't quite know who is endgame. There are hints like either way, and I kind of love like how well written this is and how well Ella Fields has constructed this story, because it is so refreshing to read a love triangle and genuinely like not know, and like genuinely be in the main character's position of finding information out about them, like about both love interests, along with the main character. And so Mildred is really struggling to know who to trust and know who is just like playing her for their own benefit and their own endgame. But we are in that exact same position. It's not like so many other like love interest stories where you can pick a side, because this book is so cleverly written with so many twists and turns, and you just are so unsure about who to trust that you can't firmly pick a side, so you can't really be annoyed by who she seems to be picking or anything like that, because you just don't know enough, and it's making for the most addictive read of my entire life. And I'm gonna stop like nattering on about how obsessed I am with this book now, and I'm gonna go and finish it. I finished Amid Clouds and Bones, and I had to take some time to think, to be honest, because I didn't know what to make of it. I was feeling really positive about it, and I ultimately did really enjoy it. I think I've come around to the fact that it was a 4-star book for me. The reason I'm not giving it 5 stars is because there was a section of the book that just felt a little bit clunky. I don't want to spoil anything, but basically my preference is that I don't really like love triangles, because I always get to the end of them and think, well, what was the point? Like, I kind of sometimes feel like I've just wasted my time, and I did have a little bit of that feeling with this book, but it did make sense. Like, the love triangle did have a pretty big impact on the plot, but also could have been left, like, I don't know, like, this is why I've been umming and ahhing about how I feel about it, because I think ultimately I just don't like love triangles. So it's kind of difficult for me to rate this one, because there was something about it that lost me. Like, it started to just feel a little bit too back and forth, and I got a little bit like, it just felt like it needed to be a bit more seamless. Like, I don't know, like I cannot really put my finger on it. But ultimately I read a standalone romantasy novel in a 24-hour period. Like, all of this to say, it was still incredibly enjoyable for me, and I will 100% be checking out more Ella Fields books. I think the reason I can't give this 5 stars is more of a me thing, because something just felt off to me, and I think like taking some time to think about it, I'm pretty sure it is just because I don't really like love triangles, and I still kind of got to the end of this book and was like, my issues with this trope haven't been fixed, and I still feel like there was no point to this at all. Whereas like the last time I updated you guys and I was kind of in the middle of this book, I very much felt like this was fixing my issues with love triangle trope. Like I was like, oh my god, like this is amazing because I genuinely don't know who she's gonna end up with. But then unfortunately as soon as I got to the end and I did know who she ended up with, I did have that typical feeling that I get when I read love triangles of like, well, what was the point then? Like no matter who she ends up with, to me it always feels a little bit like wasted time, the time that you spend reading the character with the other person. So I think it is just my own preferences with the trope. But yeah, I gave this 4 stars and it was so good that I feel a little bit slumpy now. Like I just have no idea of what to read. I kind of want to try reading book 1 in the Cottonwood Cove, but it's been a little while now since I read a book from my physical TBR, and I really do want to try and read more from my physical TBR than I buy. Just with my subscriptions this month, 3 books have been added. And then I also bought 2 books last weekend, so I'm at 5 already, and I don't think I've read 5 physical books yet this month, so I do need to pick a physical read, but I just don't know what I want. Like, to be honest, I'm really in the mood to reread Twisted Love because it's been ages since I read that, and I don't remember like details of that novel. I remember what the 3rd act conflict is, and that's about it, but that wouldn't be getting a book off my physical TBR. So I need to choose something. I'm running a bath right now and I'm gonna have a little soak in the bath and read my book, and then come in here and do some reading after that and just have a very relaxed reading-y experience. But what the hell am I in the mood for is the question. There's stuff that I'm saving for October. Like I'm kind of in the mood to read This Spells Love by Kate Robb, but this would be perfect to save until October because it's like a witchy rom-com, and I feel like that just has October written all over it. So what the hell am I in the mood for? You would think from that like, oh, I'm in the mood for a rom-com, but then I was also in the mood for a small town romance that I wanted to read on my Kindle, and now I'm looking at my shelves and I'm like, kind of in the mood for Tempest of Tea. So like there's not a clear mood today. Maybe I want to read a fantasy. I could read something that's been scaring me for a long time. I could read book 3 in the Fortuna Sworn series. I've been putting this off because of the way book 2 ended, and I've been so scared to get my heart broken that I haven't picked this book up. I binge read the first 2 back to back, was absolutely obsessed with them, and then had a complete meltdown when I read the ending of book 2 and was too scared to go into this. But I feel like I have enough distance from the characters now to maybe want to read this one. But then I could also read When the Moon Hatched. I think I'm in the mood for like beefy romantasy. So do I finally get on the When the Moon Hatched hype train? I don't know if this week is the week for When the Moon Hatched. I've also heard some not great things about the book. I know this book is getting so much hype, but everybody that I have actually spoken to in real life that has read this has just said that it is too slow and it doesn't need to be as long as it is, and I just don't know I can stomach that right now because Amid Clouds and Bones only like just pulled me out of a slump. So I think we're gonna try Deadly Dreams by KJ Sutton, book 3 in the Fortuna Sworn series. This is not on my TBR. I had no idea when the hell I was going to get to this or what the vibe was, but I'm in the mood for it, I think. So this is what we're going to read. I am 270 pages in to Deadly Dreams, and I regret taking such a long hiatus from this like story just because I was scared, because I'm having a really good time. And this book, it's dark, but it's not as bad as I was worried it would be, and I just think this series is really gonna slay. I know, like I've heard that it's gonna get real messy, and I'm kind of okay with that. I think it is very, very well written. If you don't know what Fortuna Sworn is about, Fortuna Swarm is a nightmare, and she is like the last remaining nightmare on Earth, and basically she can sense people's fears, and she uses that power like to her advantage and can like make people see or believe that they are experiencing their greatest fear and like break their minds and stuff. And in order to go searching for her brother, she makes a deal with like a fae prince, and like very similar to like Ella Field's novels, it's just like very addictive. The first book particularly is very short, very kind of devourable and like addictive, but then in like the best way possible. In the second book, the pace, like it slows down. There's a lot more like world building introduced, and like the plot is just really, really good. And yeah, I'm 3 books in and I am still so obsessed with this series, and I like almost don't want to read the 4th one because I only have the first 4, and I think it goes on like much longer. I think it goes on more than 4 books, so then I'm just gonna have to wait until I can get my hands on copies of the next books in this series, and I am scared. I do have to say, this book, the reason it's not like hurting me or I didn't need to be as scared of it is because it has very much like slowed down in pace. It feels very, very fillery, but I'm sure by the end of this book it's going to have like really built somewhere. Like it feels fillery, but also how much of that is just because it's laying groundwork for things, and it definitely seems to be laying the groundwork for things. Like when I say it feels fillery, I don't mean nothing is happening that's important, because it is important what's happening. It just kind of feels like we've reached this massive like event at the end of the second book, and now we've like stripped it back again to start building again, and that makes me very scared for the way the 4th book's gonna end, I'm not gonna lie. But this is where I'm up to. I have the smaller section left to read, so I'm over halfway, and I am going to continue reading. I do think if stuff is gonna build, it's gonna start to build from now, which is kind of scary, but also just really good, because even though this is slow and fillery, like how many times can I describe this book as fillery, it's still really easy to read and very, very easy to get lost in. The world building of this series is so nicely done that I just have such a clear vision of what all of these settings look like, and it's so easy to just lose myself in this series. I do have to say that I am glad I took a little bit of a break from the end of the last book, because I was just very, very attached to one of the love interests, even though I knew and had been warned before going into this that it's messy because it's a long Romantasy series. And even though it's messy, or supposedly messy, it's well written in the sense that it doesn't read as messy. It's kind of only when I'm talking it through to people I'm like, I see the potential for things to get messy and to kind of pull yourself out of the series and be like, this is kind of messy. But it all feels very seamless and well developed in the series. Like I can see like where it's going to get messy. Like the groundwork has been laid for a long time, but I needed to take a little bit of a break because I got way too attached to one of the love interests. So I'm kind of glad that I'm not necessarily feeling that attachment now, so I can just enjoy the process that we're going on. So yeah, I am going to keep reading this book that I am enjoying immensely. It has been a fantastic week for fantasy romance reads. I have enjoyed both of them very much. Obviously I'm a little bit behind schedule because I've been reading some pretty big books. Whatever. I don't really care. It's been so much fun to just kind of get lost in these worlds and really, really enjoy these fantasy romances that I've been reading, that I don't really care that it's put me a little bit behind on my weekly reading schedule, because I normally try to finish 2 books and be like halfway through a third, or have finished a third by the end of a week, and I'm only halfway through my second book of the week, so I am a little bit behind my normal schedule. But it's made it really fun, and I did start the week being slumpy, so that just kind of is what it is some weeks. And yes, I'm gonna actually read now. I just finished the book. It was an ending. it did what book 2 did, which is it hurt so good. It broke my heart, and then I was like, okay, I still have like 100 pages or so left, so what happens now? And then it just continued to break my heart into even smaller and smaller and smaller pieces, and then right on the last 3 pages of the book, it glued them together enough that it could shatter them all over again and still cause me pain. And I might have to jump straight into book 4 now, because what the fuck was that ending? KJ Sutton knows how to write endings. You might think, how can a Romantasy series be longer than 4 books and still going? I don't actually know how many books are supposed to be in this series, but I feel like it's quite a lot. It's because KJ Sutton really knows how to write an ending. Every single time I get to the end of one of these books, I immediately want to pick up the next one because the endings are so intense. Like, just wow. Like, just wow. That was a 5-star romance. Was it 5? I think that was a 5-star ending. When I think about the fact that the first half of this book was like fillery, I'm like, do I want to drop it down to 4 stars? But that ending, wow. I think it's somewhere in between. Maybe like 4.5, but I don't know how I'm actually going to rate this on Goodreads yet. Because of how intense that ending was, I'm going to give myself a minute before I actually review this and rate it. I kind of have a bone to pick with the person who says that Fortuna Swan's like love life is messy, because I actually don't think it's that messy. I don't know how many books are out, but I think it's like 4 or 5 and possibly more to come, but I think I've only seen 5 of them, and I don't think it's any messier than a normal Romantasy series is. So yeah, I kind of have a bone to pick with the person who said that, because that's not the vibe I'm getting from this at all. It feels very normal, and the relationships are very intense. You really, like, I personally, like, feel the, like, hurt and the betrayal when things go wrong in this series, and yeah, as I said, my heart got smashed into little pieces, and then each little piece got continually smashed into further pieces, and yeah, just, oof. I need to take a break and recover from that. I'm probably going to play Good Pizza, Great Pizza for the rest of the weekend, because I'm definitely not ready to start another book now, because that was so insane. I'm going to take a minute and then I will come back to see if I have any more thoughts on this later, because right now I'm still so shook. Like, I can't believe that I've actually just read a book that ended that way. So I don't really have any more advanced thoughts on this book. My thoughts are still just, what the fuck was that ending, and how am I ever supposed to recover from this? I will say that the one thing that I have been thinking about is kind of rating of this. I did decide to go with 5 stars in the end, and I was thinking, the reason I was umming and ahhing about 5 stars is because the beginning felt very slow and filler-ish, as I've already mentioned, but I still gave it 5 stars because I really feel like that filler really built to something and really added to the plot later in the book. It didn't feel boring to read whilst I was reading it, for one thing, and then it actually served a purpose, and it made the ending of this book that much more satisfying and really provided a basis of information that was necessary for the ending of this book. And I think KJ Sutton is a very rare author in her ability to do both romance and fantasy so incredibly well, and to be able to make a Romantasy series interesting over the course of, I looked it up and there's at least 6 books, is such a skill, because nobody really wants to read 6 books of romance, and like fantasy is more common as a long form series, but I still think 6 is a lot even for a fantasy series. So I think the ability to make these books so interesting and still have me gasping, like I still don't feel like we've really scratched the surface of how intense these books are going to get and the depth the plot is going to reach. So I am so looking forward to where the rest of this series goes, and KJ Sutton has a fan for life in me because wow. And so that kind of marks the end of another week of reading. It has flown by. I only read 2 books this week, but they were both Romantasy books. I read Amid Clouds and Bones, which is a standalone fae romantasy by Ella Fields, who is kind of a new fave author for me. Ended up giving this 4 stars, mainly because it is a love triangle trope, which just doesn't work for me, but if I liked that trope, I do think this would have had the potential to be a 5-star, because everything else about it was great. There was just something about the love triangle that didn't quite sit right with me. I kind of got to the end of the book and was like, Ella Field's ability to keep you in the dark about which of the love interests in this book you can actually trust was done impeccably well, and it made for a really fun reading experience, and a fun reading experience that I don't normally have with love triangles. I would say this is one of the best examples that I have seen as someone who doesn't really like this trope, so do with that information what you will. And then I clearly was just still in a romantasy mood, and I decided to continue with a series that is on my series TBR and actually make some progress with that. And I read Deadly Dreams book 3 in the Fortuna Sworn series, gave it 5 stars. I've literally just spent the past like 10 minutes rambling on about how much I love this book, so we're not gonna delve into that. But yeah, a smaller week of reading, but still like fine. I'm so ahead on my Goodreads goal that it really doesn't matter if I have a smaller week of reading anymore, but also it doesn't matter in general. It's all arbitrary really. So reading 2 books in a week instead of 2.5 or 3 just doesn't really matter that much. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this vlog, and if you did, then please feel free to hit that big red subscribe button down below and stay tuned for future content. I upload every single Wednesday and every single Sunday, so there is no shortage of bookish content here for you to enjoy. Also, do feel free to check me out on Bookstagram at apaigeinchapter so you can see what I'm reading and how I'm reviewing it in real time, and it might just be a fun place to get more book recommendations and content. I hope you guys are having a fantastic week and you're enjoying everything you're reading, and there are no reading slumps in your future, and I'll see you for my next video. Bye guys.